Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode number 67. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. If you'd like more information about the podcast, previous guests, want to catch up on previous episodes, or just want to drop me a line, it's all on the website, desertladydiaries.com. And I invite you to engage with me on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries and on Twitter at Desert Lady Diary. Today, I'm talking to musician and photographer Jennifer Ruggiero. Jennifer shares the story of finding and enjoying her Wonder Valley cabin for 10 years before moving to the desert permanently, and gifts you with a wonderful bit of music at the end of the episode. Welcome back to Desert Lady Diaries podcast. Today I'm talking with Jennifer Ruggiero, whose pursuit of a music career took her from the jazz clubs of her hometown, New York, to Los Angeles in the late 1970s. She's had a lifelong love affair with photography, and her work has been exhibited widely from Santa Monica to Wonder Valley and has been featured in numerous publications. Jennifer curates art shows for the Morongo Basin Cultural Arts Council's Art in Public Places, 29 Palms Inn, and is curating a show called Deconstruct Reconstruct in April of 2019 at Gallery 62 in Joshua Tree. She considers herself a fine art photographer who loves strange and unusual places that take her outside of her imagination. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
What was your very first experience with the desert?
It was sometime in the 1990s. I was a single parent in Los Angeles, had 3 kids, and I took a day off of work while they were in school and drove out to Joshua Tree. And I just found myself on a trail, and I was hiking, and it was so quiet and so peaceful. I think it might have been like June because it was a little warm, and it was amazing. It was like a spiritual awakening. It was so quiet and so beautiful, and the nature around me and the boulders and the light, and being an image maker, it just struck me. And I said, well, I have to come back here sometime soon.
So when was that you came out on that day trip?
I really don't recall. I don't remember. I did a lot of traveling up to 395 because it was very accessible to me and very diverse in the landscape, and I explored that area for a long time. And then I don't remember when I came back, probably in the 90s at some point, early 90s, before this whole area was discovered. And I would come out here and I would stay at the 29 Palms Inn, or I'd stay down in Palm Springs in the lower desert at my friend's spa in Desert Hot Springs or Palm Springs. And when I came to the high desert, I would stay mainly in the 29 Palms Inn. This was before Airbnbs, because I loved that place. I absolutely loved it. I think I've stayed in every room. It reminds me
of, I say sometimes it reminds me of those summer places like in the Poconos or the Catskills.
Yeah.
It has that kind of feel to it for me.
Yeah, it had an organic garden, and I would talk to the gardeners, and it was fantastic. And I would come sometimes in the heat of the summer during August, because it would force me to just sit out on the private patios. They have private patios in every single one of their little bungalows, and do nothing. It would force me to sit and do nothing, just read, listen to the birds, appreciate nature, get up early in the morning, go into the park a little, and go for a swim if it got too hot.
Nice. So at what point during those visits back and forth did you decide, I think I'm going to come here and be a little more serious about this?
Well, I wanted to move here earlier, but I had 3 kids, and they were in high school and then on to college. And I looked at the demographics out here then, and my kids are biracial. We're a mixed family, and there's no way I would have brought him out here then. It just wasn't welcoming for us. But for me, as a single person, I would come out here and explore. And I always had it in the back of my mind that, okay, at some point I'm going to buy something out here and retire. Time went on, and the kids graduated high school, and they went off to art school. My daughter was in Cal Arts, and my older son had already graduated off in his music career. And my daughter's twin brother he did not want to go to college. He's self-taught, was doing computer science, had his own computer company. Anyway, long story short, that afforded me more time to come out here since I didn't have the kids at home. So I'd come out on the weekends. Sometimes I would stay in Desert Hot Springs, sometimes Palm Springs, and most often in the high desert. I used to go to art tours. I was very involved in the community. You know, I was sort of like a part-timer here, but didn't really have a place that I could call my own.
Right.
And you know how that feels. A lot of people know how that feels.
Right.
And my friends thought I was crazy, like all my LA friends. Why do you go out there so much, you know? And I would just go out to the middle of nowhere and hike and enjoy the silence, enjoying the openness of it all. I ended up in Wonder Valley one year for art tours. And I said, oh, wow, this is really cool. And at that point, I had left my previous career in the entertainment industry. I worked for Warner Brothers for 10 years, which I absolutely loved. It was like the most fabulous job I've ever had, doing interactive production. But my kids got older, especially the twins. I had twins, and they were becoming teenagers, and I needed a job that afforded me more time. So I started teaching computer science, interactive production, interactive design, Photoshop, photography, all those wonderful things. So I had the summers off, and I had more time off. And when they got older, I was still in that field, and they're off to college, so I had all this time to do what I wanted. So I'd come out here and wander around, and after my visit to Wonder Valley during art tours, I started looking around. I said, you know, I could actually afford to buy a little cabin out here. So I started looking, and eventually I found one on 5 acres way out there. And it was completely refurbished, except it didn't have water. It had underground wires for electricity to the cabin, 5 acres fenced, and it was completely redone.
Did it have a water tank for water?
Nothing.
No, nothing.
400 square foot exposed drywall. The man who built it had built it for his wife, who was a photographer. So it had track lighting and had a wood burning stove. It was actually done up very, very nicely. You know, I needed to finish it. And eventually I put in a water tank, a pump. But prior to that, I would just come out here every chance I could get and, you know, haul my water. I slept on an air mattress on a concrete floor. Cooked on a Coleman stove. You know, there was a picnic bench outside and just explored Wonder Valley, like 10 years of just loving Wonder Valley and exploring it. Like I said, eventually I did add a water tank, a water pump, an outdoor hot and cold shower, a little enclosure, a utility sink. I never put in an indoor kitchen or indoor toilet. I always had a compost toilet. But it was amazing. And I'd come out here by myself and sit outside and watch the light on the Shadow Mountains. That's what I call them, the Shadow Mountains. And I explored all of Wonder Valley. And I would get up in the morning and walk around with my camera and discover all these abandoned homesteads, and they just drew me in. For some reason, they took me back to my moments in New York City, time in New York City. It had a sort of similar vibe, although, you know, you look at the landscape and everything, it's so different.
Right.
But I don't know, there was something about New York that was my muse, New York City, where I'd walk around, I would get bursts of creative energy. Of course, there were more people, and I'd see people, and I would do things out in Wonder Valley that it was not the case. But I felt the same surge of creativity coming back to me, because I left my career as a musician and a creative artist when I had my kids and divorced and became a single parent. My focus was on them and what they wanted to do with their lives.
As it is for most parents.
Nurturing them.
Right.
So I had sort of left that. I always knew I was going to come back to it. Well, Wonder Valley sort of ignited my spirit. And once again, all my friends in LA would say, what are you doing out there? You're crazy. Why are you going out there? You're all alone. That's how I like it.
That's the point.
The point is to get out of here. And I had this job at a very well-known private school, and I was a technology coordinator responsible for all the servers, all the equipment, all the laptops, teaching all the kids the computers, and servicing all the teachers and their needs, and integrating technology into the classroom. Needless to say, it was stressful.
Sure.
And I had a not so nice boss.
And not very creative. I mean, I guess creative problem solving to an extent.
The kids, working with the kids, were creative. They'd come and hang out in my office, especially the theater kids. We had a blast. But other than that, I had to get out of there. I was like, get me out. It really saved me because I had to keep the job. I wanted to leave, but my daughter was at Cal Arts, and I was helping her through school, and I had to work.
Right.
I had to have a job. I had to have health insurance, you know, all of the above. And I certainly wasn't prepared financially to move out here, but I was able to take out loans and scrape together some cash and buy this cabin, which was very affordable then. And that's where it all started. And then I said to myself, okay, well, I would come out to my ranch. I called it my ranch. And, open the gates, get out of the car, open the gates. And I had all this space. And I said, I could totally add on to this just a little bit, or maybe build a structure or a dome home. I always wanted to do a dome home out there, a little bit further away from the original 400 square foot structure. And then the 400 square foot structure could be my studio. And I also was a certified yoga teacher at that point too, where I could do my work, and I had all these wonderful ideas. And I said, okay, well, I'm just going to retire out there. Well, 10 years of owning this place and being out there, one time I was out there for like 2 months.
Wow.
I said, you know what? It's a little too far out there for me. The elements are really harsh as I got older. If I was 20, 30 something, yeah. I recently turned 66. I bought my house that I own out here 2.5 years ago. So needless to say, at that point, I felt like, okay, I don't want to do all this work. So I ended up not moving out there and instead finding a really wonderful place in Indian Cove, which is the best of both worlds as far as I'm concerned, because it's right up against the park. It hasn't gentrified yet. We have maybe 2 or 3 Airbnbs at the most. I don't think it will ever become an Airbnb pocket because the community just won't have it. And I can walk to the park. It's in my backyard, and I'm close enough to Joshua Tree, and it's a great neighborhood.
It's like a perfect location for you.
And the energy there is incredible. I discovered Rattlesnake Canyon, and I was up there almost every day when I first moved, because I had the benefit of rain the first year. It rained and rained and rained, and there were tadpoles and frogs and birds and waterfalls, and you could actually go swimming in the water. It was so deep because it rained so much. So that was a beautiful welcoming for me. And sometimes I would just hike up to Rattlesnake, sit on the rocks, and I felt like I was in Northern California. And I knew that was temporary. It's not going to last.
Right.
The desert is usually dry. I just happened to luck out. I eventually let my cabin in Wonder Valley go, and it was bittersweet. I sometimes regret it. Sometimes I don't. There's a lot of upkeep.
Yeah, sure.
Out there, a lot of
well,
upkeep.
And it's so far out, it's really hard to, you got to haul everything in.
Yeah.
And finding, reliable help and assistance is difficult here as well. So there's a lot of downsides, if you will. The upside is it's beautiful, it's quiet, and it's a wonderful place to be if you have the skills to maintain a home there.
Exactly. It's not necessarily quiet when the base starts bombing. They move to the Wonder Valley side of the mountain. It gets pretty hairy out there.
Sure.
And that isn't often. Usually this time of year is when it starts happening, towards the end of the year. But I had to realize that, I really can't afford to keep that place unless I Airbnb it, which I could have done, but that, again, is a full-time job.
Right. Then you're driving out there to clean it, or you're hiring someone to drive out there to clean it and do everything that needs done with that. And then if you've got people staying way out there and they have an issue, or...
Yeah, you have to be... I did it during the recession. I Airbnb'd it, like right towards the end, I guess you would say, or maybe like in the middle of it. I did really well, actually, but I was the kind of Airbnb person that, even though I didn't live here, I talked to every single one of my guest requests and Googled them on Facebook, or Googled them online, found they were who they said they were, knew everything as much as I could find out about them before I said yes, and so I never had a problem, and they were all really quiet. I didn't want people out there that wanted to party, but it was a lot of work. I was on 24/7. When I had people staying at my cabin, my cell phone was on 24 hours a day in case of an emergency. And I did a few. I had one where this guy was coming from Vegas, and I said, don't go out there in the middle of the night, or when it's dark, you'll get lost, or you might get lost.
Yeah.
And he didn't listen. He stopped. I told him, stop off at the Palms, have a beer. I would always tell everybody to go to the Palms. So he did that, and I get a phone call at like 11 o'clock at night.
Can't find it.
I'm stuck.
Oh, no.
Well, where are you? Describe it to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Pitch black.
I said, well, how far down Wilson Road did you go? Did you turn right? Did you just keep going straight? He goes, I kept going straight, and then I went down this road. I said, I think I know where you are. So just stay there, because my cell phone's running out of power. I said, it's okay. Stay there. Put your lights on. I'm calling Bally's Towing. they'll come help you.
Oh my goodness.
And they towed him out. But that's a typical example. He was really nice about it. He said it was entirely my fault. I said, hey, it's an adventure.
Yeah, for sure.
Welcome to the desert.
And it's nice that he had that attitude about it, because recently I saw, I think it was the folks over here at the inn were saying that they had guests the weekend of the storm that we had, which was unbelievable, and downtown Joshua Tree closed with muddy roads, and for a mile or two the road was completely closed, which is the main road through here, and was telling the hotel manager that she wanted a refund because of the weather, and that the hail dented her car and she should be responsible. And I thought, that's just nature. It could have happened at your own home. I don't know what it is when people come out, and I don't know whether it's exclusive to here or other areas. When people come and visit, they just have this expectation that everything is on us.
I think there's a different demographics coming out here now. When I was doing it in Wonder Valley, I didn't get any of that. I didn't get that entitlement attitude. I had some really well-known writers spending weeks out there. I had an amazing architect that said, wow, if I didn't live so far away, I'd buy this cabin. He loved it.
Yeah.
In fact, the pipes froze because I had the pipes outside. I had piped the hot-cold eco-temp shower.
Yeah.
And they froze and burst, and he didn't have any water. And I said, you can leave if you want. I'll refund you your money. He goes, no, I want to stay an extra day. He goes, I don't care. I'm fine. He was a really cool guy.
That's cool.
So I didn't have that level of entitlement.
Right.
I never had to deal with it. Oh, I take that back. I had one guy who was a computer scientist from San Francisco who rented it for a week. And he asked me, do you have internet there? I said, no. He goes, well, will my cell phone work? I said, it depends on your provider. Verizon works. So check with your provider and see if you have coverage out there.
Right.
So I gave him all the information he needed. I walked him through the whole process. He arrives there on the first day, and he goes, I can't stay here. It's out in the middle of nowhere, and I have no internet access.
Hello.
So I said, well, we talked about this before you agreed. I said, and I was a little bit upset. But it's like, if it's not going to work for you, it's not going to work for you.
Right. Well, and the one thing I do love about Airbnb is that those maps that they have on there of where your location is are really great.
I know.
So it's not like you're sight unseen. You've got the photos of the place, which I'm sure you had great photos.
I
right?
had photos.
And then you've got a map which shows that there's nothing there.
And I do explain where it is.
Sure.
I don't think he got it.
Yeah.
Some people just don't get it, until they get there and they go, oh my God, is it safe out here? Is something going to happen to me? So I said, you sure you don't want to try it for like a couple of days? I'll comp you a day,
Smart.
to see if you like it. It might change your life.
Yeah.
You want it out.
Oh.
That was the only time. He was kind of frightened. I was really surprised.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, I guess, when you live in a close proximity and that's all you've ever lived in, it can be a little off-putting, and for some people the silence.
Yeah, and you're driving down this 2.5 mile dirt road. My cabin was off of Amboy, 2.5 miles down a dirt road going north, and were quite a few abandoned cabins there. It could get a little, well, do I really want to stay here? Am I going to get attacked in the middle of the night?
Right, exactly, because it can happen. It's the desert. So you started off with a music career. And then moved into this technology career. How did the photography fit into that? Because that seems to be your main creative. And then you're also dabbling in ceramics now. How did the photography come in and out of your life at these different times?
Well, in high school, I was really involved in organizing and social justice and the Vietnam War. My sister was 2 years older than me, and she was going to NYU. And she was very active, very active. In fact, she was on TV once taking a computer out of a computer science room with a bunch of people during a protest because NYU was supporting the war in some way. I don't remember the exact details. So anyway, I've always been a very visual person and a very auditory person. And I took an independent study. We had a dark room. I was raised in New York and East Northport, Long Island, but I had the privilege of going to Northport High because it was the only high school in our area. And Northport was an incorporated village, very old money, very wealthy people, whereas East Northport were all of your immigrants, Italians, Jews, Irish, that were on their way to becoming middle class. But we got to go to the school with all what we called the WASPs.
Yeah.
And we had all these great facilities, music, art. I mean, it was amazing. And so we had a dark room. And Mr. Jackier was the art teacher. And so I said, I want to do an independent study project in my senior year in photography. So he signed the paperwork for me. I had work to get anything I wanted. So I worked and I landed a job in the local camera store. I bought myself a camera. And I would take the Long Island Railroad to New York City, go to all these consciousness-raising meetings with my sister, and all of these great meetings. It was such an education in politics and social. I mean, it was amazing. So I'd walk the streets of New York with this camera, and I would take pictures. I mean, I had, street theater was spontaneous there. We had like Abby Hoffman on the Lower East Side. You would draw a crowd, and there he was making his little crazy speeches, and I had all these photographs of him in New York in the 60s because I would cut class. I was a bad girl. I'd cut class, and I don't think I hardly ever went to class during my senior year, but I had really cool teachers who didn't really, they were cool.
Mm-hmm. Plus you were doing an independent study.
But I wasn't supposed to miss so many classes. But anyway, so, I loved black and white photography. So I'd come back and I'd process everything. I spent hours in the dark room. And I absolutely loved it. I loved it. So that's where I first learned the art of photography. And then I sort of let it go after I graduated high school and moved to New York and took up my first love, which was music. I came from a family who did, you weren't supposed to, my father was a World War II Air Force pilot and flew a bomber plane, and my mother was a housewife raised by a single parent. My grandmother during the Depression in New York City lived in Little Italy, so their whole mentality was no, you don't do that. And I was very talented musically. In school I would take music, but they never were supportive of that. So finally I decided I'm going to give that to myself, and I took music lessons, and I excelled very quickly, and I went to Leonard Davis Center for the Performing Arts. And I played all over New York. It was John Lewis, Charlie Palmieri. I mean, New York was amazing. I went to Jazzmobile. I studied with Jimmy Heath. And I kind of left the photography behind and pursued the music. And met my husband. And then New York, I don't know if you know much about New York in the 70s. It got like really seedy.
I lived across the river in Jersey.
Yeah, I lived on the Lower East Side near Tompkins Square Park, 8th Street. All over 13th Street, once with my sister for a couple of years and her boyfriend. And then East 4th Street between 1st and 2nd, which is where I settled for a while, which is a cool little neighborhood, little pocket, with Hell's Angels around the corner, the police precinct around the other corner, and a Catholic school down the street.
You had it all.
We had variety.
Yeah.
A block down, there was major drugs being dealt in Tompkins Square Park.
Right.
And I would walk down to the Lower East Side with my music buddies, and we'd practice in Malachi's loft all night long. Malachi would pull out these charts, amazing charts, and I played with some of the most amazing musicians in New York City.
What did you play?
I wasn't as good as them. Alto saxophone and flute, because they had been playing for like 15 years. And I was playing for like 4 years.
Oh my gosh.
But Malachi was the most amazing. He was like a Buddhist. He was very gentle, sweet man, and he was sort of my mentor. And plus the teachers over at Jazzmobile, and that was in Harlem. And so when I moved to LA, I met my husband at Leonard Davis Center for Performing Arts, and we decided we had it with New York, where we were going to go pursue our music career in LA or in San Francisco. That's where we were going to go, because he had relatives, Uncle John and Uncle Curtis, who lived in South LA, and Uncle Bob, who lived in Northern California. So we ended up at Uncle John's house in South LA, it was South Central LA, and we lived there for about a year and a half with Uncle John and his partner. Uncle John was an actor and a gourmet cook, and Curtis worked with kids with disabilities out in El Segundo, but didn't drive. He would never drive a car. He'd get dressed up in his suit and his top hat, and he'd go take the bus to work every day.
Wow.
He was afraid to drive.
Wow.
And they loved us. We loved them. And then we rented a house. Being a mixed race couple, we could not rent an apartment. They would slam doors in our face. We went to Highland Park. I mean, all over. And we kept getting doors slammed in our face. People would never respond to us, or they say, oh, it's rented already. So we ended up living in South LA in this cool little pocket, and down the street was a recording studio. And so we met the guy, we would record there. And then I did music and I traveled a bit, did some Vegas things, and did a studio gig for a movie with James Earl Jones, Troubled Times. And then I got pregnant, got married, had my kids, became a single parent, and gone. I just kind of let it go because I couldn't travel and raise kids.
No.
So that's how that all transpired. And then once my kids were born, I bought another camera.
Ah.
I started
Lots of baby pictures.
That I could do. That could be a creative outlet because I could take pictures of them. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really get back into photography till like late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. Is that photography going to play into the Wonder Valley Museum of Art? And what is that and where is that? It's your Instagram, one of your Instagrams.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, that takes me back to when I was looking for a cabin in Wonder Valley. And I met this guy, Chris Veit. A lot of the old people, not old people, but people that have been out here
a while.
For a while, know who he is. I don't know if he still lives here. Anyway, Chris had this cabin right off the bend on Amboy Road. You pass Iron Age, and it was on the left-hand side up this hill. Mm-hmm. And he was selling it, and it needed a lot of work. And it had this amazing art piece on the wall that a famous artist had painted. And he goes, "You're getting the art piece with it. I'm not taking that," because it was on the drywall. And he was a cool guy. He took me out there, showed me the cabin, and I loved the area. It's like, this will get me away from everything. But I'm thinking, I just can't deal with this work. I still have, kids I have to deal with. I have a full-time job. So I said to him, I love your cabin, but I can't buy it because I can't deal with having to do all that work. I said, you should keep it and develop it into the Wonder Valley Institute of Contemporary Art. And he did. For about 2 years. And he had a couple of parties out there, art openings. It was great. He had live music. He built a porch, and it was so cool. And eventually he sold it, and some guy bought it and refurbished it. I don't know who he is or what he does. And so I always had that on my mind, the Wonder Valley Institute for Contemporary Art. So I thought, I'm going to start a Facebook page. I'm not a Facebook, an Instagram page. This was just probably about a year ago.
Okay.
But I couldn't fit Wonder Valley Institute of Contemporary Art. It was too long. So that's where I came up with the museum.
I see.
And what that is basically is a lot of the photos I've taken. I have like 12 years, thousands of photos of Wonder Valley. And so a lot of the stuff you see me posting, I've taken years ago. Wow. Some of it new, but most of it, some of those cabins aren't even there. And I thought, I'm going to do this to share the history, because there's all these new people moving out there, and they seem to love the same things I loved about it. So it'd be really cool to share all this.
Well, and even
images.
to see some things that aren't there anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's what that's about.
That's fun. Well, I like it because I love those cabins too. And whenever anybody comes to visit me from out of town and they've never been out here, I run them out to the Palms for a Sunday morning breakfast. But on the way there, we listen to Kim Stringfellow's audio from her Jackrabbit Homestead project.
That is a great piece.
Which is awesome. And it's about 30 minutes, so it's about the length of the drive there. And then when we get there, I take them across the street to Laura's place where she has the books.
And isn't that the coolest place?
So I take them, I said, now you've been listening to all of this about these homesteads. Now you're going to actually walk in and see what something looks like. Yeah,
I love Kim Stringfellow. I follow her. She's an amazing historian. I mean, she really puts it out there in a way that it's so easy to digest.
And finds really interesting pockets and places and people to talk to, which is a lot of fun. If someone were to come to you and say, you know what, I think I'm going to move out to the desert, what are some things that you would say to them?
I would say, do it if you really want to do it, but don't romanticize it. I even did that when I first bought my cabin in Wonder Valley.
Go talk about that a little bit more.
Well, this whole romantic, I guess perspective or whatever you want to call it, of like, oh, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be an artist and I'm going to have all this space. Yeah, that's true. And I'm going to have this romantic connection. Yeah, you do have this deep, soulful, at least I did, connection. However, reality is it's hard work. It ain't easy living out in Wonder Valley, and it's not easy living in the desert depending on where you live. I chose to live on a street with a paved road for a reason.
Right.
I'm older. I don't want to deal with the flooding and the dirt and all that other stuff. I would prefer to be on 2.5 acres way out there, but that's not a reality for me. If you choose that environment, be aware that it's a rural environment. You're going to get flooding, not all the time, but when it floods, it floods. You could get hail. You could get a lot of lightning.
The wind sometimes. Yeah.
You're going to be working to maintain your structure constantly.
Right.
Maintaining, because the desert sucks everything out of it. I mean, it kind of preserves the wood a little bit, but you're constantly repairing. You're constantly doing stuff.
I find even just here in this apartment, I'm constantly chasing, especially at this time of the year, I'm chasing the sun, closing the blinds so that, because the sun is very strong here. So it doesn't fade stuff, so it doesn't dry up and dry rot stuff. You have to be kind of conscious of that sort of thing.
Exactly. I would say if you haven't spent a lot of time out here, rent something first. Or come out here a lot and make a decision and look at the different areas and research them geographically. Like, what are you near a flood zone? Are you near a wall? Like, what's happening out there? And be respectful of the environment. Please don't come out here bring the city with you. I know this area is getting gentrified, and I see some stuff that reminds me of LA that I don't like. I'm not talking about people like abusing the park. I see that, not a lot, but I do see it, especially up in Rattlesnake Canyon where I live. Dogs off leash, people playing loud music, throwing garbage. The other day I saw someone carve I didn't see them do it, but they had carved their initials in the rock up there. Anyway, but those of us that have been here for a while, and I consider myself having been here for a while because I didn't just come out here. I knew people. I knew a community of people. I had a place out here for like 12 years.
Right.
I like the new ideas coming in here. I love the new creative artists coming in here. Some of them have really cool ideas. Some of them are really young and they probably won't be here forever. They're transient, like that age group is. But don't try to turn this into your citified version of of the desert so that you feel more comfortable. And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. I personally, and there are people that differ with my opinion, I don't want that. I really don't.
Right.
I like some of the new shops, some of the new ideas, the new artists, and the really cool new artists. You always need new blood in an art community.
Right.
You always do. If you just keep yourself self-contained with just the people that live there and you kind of shoo off the people that don't live here or haven't been here long enough to be justified to show anything, you're cutting yourself short. You need new blood, new ideas flowing in. Some people are really amazing that have come out here or don't live out here full time yet. But what I am worried about is it turning into another Sedona or...
Yeah. No, I was in Sedona in the early 90s, just drove through. And then when I went back, I don't know, it was probably 15, 20 years later, I didn't even recognize the place.
Exactly. Yes.
I said, what happened here? And that's what happened.
And hopefully that doesn't happen here. I mean, it has become much more densely populated than it was. I do see a lot of people coming out here who don't respect the natural world. And I hear all these horror stories about people in Airbnbs with loud parties, bright lights. If you don't like the dark sky
and the quiet,
don't come here.
Right.
Don't come out here. And please, if you're an Airbnb owner, all you wonderful Airbnb owners out there that have boosted the economy, and especially the locals who own their own cabins that they're renting out and they're able to make a living out here, don't put bright motion detector lights, and explain to people that the dark sky is part of the beauty, and that's why you don't have those lights on your cabin. And if they require that, maybe you can work something out with them to make them feel a little, because I don't feel like you should just cut people off.
No.
Maybe they're a little paranoid, they're a little scared, so you work with them.
Right.
And try to help them come to a level where they can appreciate
right.
the way most of us like to live here.
Right.
So leave that. Don't put that on your cabin, your Airbnb rental. Explain to people that they can't have gigantic bonfires in an area that could burn like that.
Right.
Or loud music playing.
Because it travels for miles.
Or respect other people's property. Don't trespass. I mean, what needs to happen is people need an education. So I would tell people, come out to the desert with an open heart, an open mind, and with respect for the environment and for the land. Forget about everything else I said. If you respect the environment and you respect the land, you'll be okay. And I am highly, highly concerned more than anything else with the environmental situation out here.
Right.
With global warming, I've seen a lot of changes. And that's my main concern. So, and be prepared. Be prepared to get stuck in the...
Right. Have your water, have a blanket. Or,
Have a phone number
right,
to a
exactly.
local towing company.
Gas and a phone charge.
If you like to explore like me, I've gotten stuck a few times out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I appreciate you coming and talking with us today. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Most of us know Jennifer as a photographer, so it was a real treat when she asked if she could give me a piece of her music to put at the end of the episode. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for listening to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast. I want you to know how much I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. Jennifer said the desert reignited her creativity. Has it done the same for you? Leave a comment on the Facebook page about what or how that happened for you. If it's more comfortable, send an email to me at desertladydiaries@gmail.com. Next week, come back for a discussion about snakes. I've seen Danielle Wall in action, so I can't wait to hear how she became so interested in and proficient with these desert creatures. If you're enjoying this podcast, would you do me a favor and take a moment right now to share a review on iTunes or any other platform you're listening from, or rate it on the Facebook page? I'd really appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening. As promised, here's Jennifer on Native American flute with Desert Sunrise.